Shadow work is rarely easy, especially when we're uncovering things that we'd rather not see. But we don't have to walk this path alone. Across the world's myths, there are dark gods who are willing to walk with us and help us and aid us in our journey. And we're going to talk about three of them tonight. So each of these gods carries a lesson about death, transformation, and that power that we hold within ourselves, and that we can tap into at any time. So if you are looking to deepen your shadow work path with the wisdom of the dark gods, then you are in the right place. So merry meet, I'm Aislin, this is Ask Aislin, and tonight we are here talking about more dark gods for shadow work. So welcome to those who are joining us, merry meet. If you're here with us live, say hi in the chat and let us know that you are here. Also, make sure to leave a heart or a thumbs up somewhere in the video, and that will help us get this out to the feed of more people. So we're going to dive in. We actually have three separate gods that we're going to talk about tonight, and we have a lot to talk about. So let us dive in. And of course, if you have worked with one or more of these gods, we'd love to hear from you. And if there are other dark gods that you've worked with that have particularly aided you in your shadow work journey, we'd also love to hear from you. I'm looking to do future episodes on more dark gods and dark goddesses. And I'd love to add any that you're working with to our next episode. So we are going to first, let me just tell you a little bit about why I'm doing this episode. So a few months ago, I did an episode on dark gods for shadow work. And previous to that, I had done a couple of different episodes on dark goddesses. We explored Kali and Lilith and Hecate, among some of the well-known ones, and also some lesser-known ones, that goddesses that people might have been hearing about for the first time. In an episode a couple of months ago, we talked about Chiron, the wounded healer, Poseidon, kind of that god who is the depths of our, can help us explore the depths of our feelings, especially feelings that we're trying to repress or suppress. We talked about Saturn as a god who helps kind of shake things up, but teaches us some of those life lessons that we need in order to evolve to what the type of person that we want to become. And then we also talked about Odin, who has so much wisdom to give us from hanging on the tree Yggdrasil. And we can learn a lot from that. Sometimes it's time for us to hang and wait for the life lessons to appear for us, or the wisdom of those life lessons to appear. So because these episodes were so popular in the past, I decided that I wanted to do another episode. This episode tonight was supposed to be 4 different gods, but because there's so much to talk about with each one, we are actually going to talk about 3 tonight. And what that means is that we'll have a future episode on still more dark gods for shadow work. So the 3 gods that we'll be talking about tonight are Anubis. He's an Egyptian god. We're going to get into a lot of detail, but I'm just going to briefly go through each of the ones we're talking about tonight. He weighs the heart against the feather of truth. We are going to be talking about Shiva, the Hindu god whose dance destroys, but also gives birth to new life. And then we're also going to talk about Loki, who can show us the chaos in the shadows that we are trying to bind, or the ones that we're trying to really avoid. And what we're going to learn from exploring Loki's story is that when we try to bind or to really suppress the shadow within us, we actually cause more problems than if we just face it head on. And then this episode was supposed to include an Etruscan god named Aita, A-I-T-A, but we're going to not have enough time to explore him tonight, so we will add him to the next episode, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that at the end. So let us dive in first. We're going to be talking about Anubis first. And Anubis is an Egyptian god. He is a god who actually came to me, I would say about a year or more ago. He came to me in a dream. And he's previous to that a god that I had never worked with before, and I haven't worked with him as extensively as I've worked with some of my other deities that I work with regularly, but he has become one of my gods that I'm working with as well. So Anubis is, as I mentioned, an Egyptian god. He is the god of death, of embalming and mummification. He is also considered a psychopomp. A psychopomp is a god or goddess who guides souls either to or through the underworld. But gods who are psychopomps also tend to be those who can kind of pass through the veils easily. And so they also can often open up the ability to work with other gods. So if you are having trouble, like if you're coming to this whole idea of working with gods or goddesses for the first time, or you're having trouble connecting to them, sometimes working with a psychopomp can help. And people won't even think of that because they think of this as a god who kind of ushers the souls of the dead, but it's also a god who brings messages back and forth to the living as well. So Ganesha is one of these gods who can open up doorways to work with other deities, and Anubis is one as well, as we're going to see. So the Egyptian Book of the Dead, in the Egyptian Book of the Dead, the story tells us that Anubis weighs the hearts of those who are deceased against the feather of Mot, the goddess of justice. And so if your heart is light enough, which means that it doesn't contain dishonesty or corruption, or there's just not, it's not overcome by dishonesty and corruption, then your soul will continue on into the afterlife, or so the story tells us. But if your heart is heavy with sin or heavy with dishonesty or corruption, then it is devoured by the crocodile-headed goddess Amit, and then from there you pass through into a different kind of afterlife, right? So in our shadow work, Anubis can teach us how to weigh our own hearts. So sometimes our hearts get very heavy with guilt. They can get heavy with shame. They can get heavy with all different kinds of emotions that we repress. But a lot of times it's guilt and shame, right? And oftentimes we may be carrying guilt and shame for something that we've actually done, but oftentimes the carrying of that guilt and shame far outweighs what we've actually done. So we carry it far, far into the future, and then it just begins to get in our way, right? So one of the questions that we can think about when we are exploring a god like Anubis is, are we carrying guilt, shame, or any kind of repressed pain that is making our heart heavy? So we go through grief or loss. Of course, there's heaviness in the heart, but sometimes we carry it too long and we allow it to keep us heavy, to weigh us down, to not allow us to move into lighter states of being. And this is when a god like Anubis can help us. So our shadow work then, when working with Anubis in this kind of way, our shadow work becomes about lightening the heart, acknowledging what burdens us, and also forgiving ourselves. And oftentimes, forgiveness can be difficult for many people because, especially if there's someone who has perpetrated something on us, it can feel like if we forgive that person, then we're like saying it's okay what that person did. But really, what this type of forgiveness is about is forgiving ourselves and allowing us to let go of all of those like heavier emotions that we're carrying that have long served their purpose, and now they're just in our way. So Anubis is also a great god of letting go. Like, what are the things that you would like to let go or let pass away so that you can step into the newness of who you are or who you want to be? So you might ask yourself, what is it that makes your heart heavy? So if you're looking for a reflection question to use either in your shadow work journaling or just in moments of contemplation, ask yourself, what is making your heart heavy? What's weighing your heart down? Also, you might ask yourself, what are you carrying that doesn't belong to you? So sometimes the things that are weighing your heart down aren't even yours. They might be ancestral. They might be from people in this waking life that you're carrying their burdens too. Sometimes those of us who are very sensitive to energy, without even realizing it, we're constantly picking up everybody else's stuff and we're carrying that. And so you might be carrying guilt and shame and grief and pain that's not even yours. So important questions for you to contemplate in your shadow work. Now, a ritual suggestion for working with Anubis would be to light a black and a white candle. And so kind of think about the scales and maybe the black candle representing the heaviness, the things that you want to let go of, and then the white candle representing the lightness of your heart and the things that you want more of, that you want more joy or you want more peace. Or centeredness or groundedness or something like that. And then you can meditate on the scales and the feather versus the heart. And so, another kind of way that you could use a ritual like this is if there is guilt and shame or something that's very heavy on your heart that you'd like to let go of, you can meditate on that and meditate on the scales. You can see the feather, you know, or your heart lighter than a feather, you know, and allow your, and through that meditative state, allowing yourself to let go and release. So, if you wanted to work with Anubis, the symbols that represent Anubis are the jackal. So, Anubis is pictured as a jackal-headed god. Obviously, the scales make sense as a symbol of Anubis, and the ankh. Now, offerings to give to Anubis, both physical offerings and then offerings of things that you can actually do. So you can offer him bread, you can offer him incense and wine, black candles, obsidian and onyx, or other dark colored stones. But I also like offerings that aren't about things or stuff that we have to put out. So you can also make changes in your life or do things in your life that serve as an offering to the gods. So in the case of Anubis, you can offer remembrance for your ancestors or remembrance for those who have departed. And because remember, he is a psychopomp and he is very intimately connected to our ancestors and those that we love who have passed on. And so honoring them can be a way to also honor him. I'm curious if anybody has worked with Anubis. We'd love to hear from you. If it sounds like he's a god that you would be interested in working with, let us know. And just pausing for a moment to say hi to those in the chat. I see that Adam is here, Mary Meet, and Taliesin, Melinda, Jenny, Cersei, and Kurt. Mary Meet, everybody, and welcome. And hopefully you found the feed, at least those of you who are here, you found the live feed okay. But there are some changes in the way that lives are happening in Facebook groups, and so hopefully people will find us. Um, okay, so let us go on now. We're going to talk about the next god, and this god is Shiva. So Shiva is a god of the Hindu pantheon. He is the destroyer of the Hindu Trimurti, and the Trimurti includes Brahma as the creator, Vishnu as the sustainer, and Shiva as the destroyer. So sometimes people will shy away from working with a god like Shiva in a similar way that they might shy away from working with a god like Kali because they're worried about that destructive aspect. But as we're going to see in Shiva's story, as well as the shadow work that we're going to talk about regarding Shiva, the destruction that Shiva brings is the destruction that creates space for something new. So if you are in a place in your life where you need something to be shaken up, and Shiva can be a very good god because he will destroy the things that you're ready to let go of, and then that opens up space for what you're wanting to draw in. So as I mentioned, he's a god of destruction, transformation, but also a god of regeneration. And he is also, there is a paradox that he embodies. He is an ascetic yogi on one hand, but he is also the cosmic dancer, the Nataranha, which is the god of death, the dance of death, and the dance of destruction. So in his form as Nataraja, he dances the cosmic dance that destroys the world. So in the stories, it says that a time will come when the world is ready to be destroyed, and Shiva will, prior to this, Brahma will have created the world, and then Vishnu will sustain it as long as possible. And then eventually, Shiva will arrive and he will do his dance of death, his cosmic dance, and he will destroy the world. And destroy all of creation. Destroy the destruction, though, will then lead to the creation of the next world, and then Brahma will create the next world, and then the cycles will continue. So we can think of this as like a larger cycle going on around us. And we can also think of this as the more individualized cycles that happen within us, right? And as witches, when thinking about the wheel of the year, we can also think about this as well, right? Because we have these points in the wheel of the year where there's birth and there's fertility and there's greenness and newness, right? And freshness. And then we also have parts of the wheel where there's darkness and there is death and there's transformation. And then the whole wheel is birthed again. Some say at Samhain, some say at Yule. And then the whole cycle begins again. So Shiva's dance, which is said to end the world, also gives birth to the new ones. Now, in our shadow work, Shiva shows us that destruction is never the end, because I mean that's the point of the story is to not fear the destruction of things, because they always give birth to something new. It's just the beginning of something. And so in some ways this can be the tower moment, right? So we sometimes get really upset or fearful when the tower card shows up in a reading. But what it shows us is only through that some type of destruction do we have the ability to truly have the space for what we want. In our shadow work, this is we can use Shiva, or he can aid us in helping us to burn down our false identities. So if there's an identity that you feel like you're carrying that isn't yours, or maybe it's one that you've long outgrown. Maybe it was an identity of yours and you no longer feel like you embody that. He can help you burn down those false identities. He can also help you burn down the old stories that you might tell yourself. Or perhaps there are stories about what you can or you can't do that have just become embedded within you through years and years and years. And he can help you tear those down and burn those down. He can help you release unhealthy attachments. So if you have an unhealthy attachment to a person, maybe a person in your past or a person in your present that you are hoping to release yourself from, he can help you burn that away or burn that down, so that new growth can arise, right? He can also very much help you with limiting thoughts and limiting beliefs. Again, kind of those old narratives that are not serving you, he can help you to let go of those. Shiva reminds us that what feels like loss really isn't loss when we look at it the right way. It is transformation in disguise. And that can often help us to get through some of the darkest times if we remind ourselves of that. He can also help you release old attachments to your, or to release attachments to your old identities, relationships, and thought patterns that aren't serving you. So a ritual idea for working with Shiva is one of my favorite ritual ideas that I share a lot of the time. When it comes to dark moons, I really like to write down all the things that I would like to release in that cycle, and then burn them or destroy them in some way. I think that burning them is a very fitting way to work with Shiva because of the element of fire. The element of fire is so connected to him. But if you are in a place where burning isn't possible, or you just don't feel comfortable burning, you can just destroy that paper in some way. So ripping it apart is always a good option. Here would be a good prompt for you to reflect on in your shadow work. What needs to burn down in your life or inside of you so that new life can grow? What needs to burn down in your life or inside of you so that new life can grow? And then you can again contemplate that just through, I like to just contemplate while walking kind of at dusk or at night, and just think about questions like that. Maybe if good ideas come up, I might speak them into my notes app in my phone. Other people might want to actually sit down and take the time to journal this out, or you can always get into like a yin yoga pose or get really comfortable in a meditative state, and then just let yourself kind of process that question. So symbols. So if you decided that you wanted to work with Shiva, the trident is a symbol of Shiva. The Damaru, which is a hourglass-shaped drum. So if you are a musician or somebody who's into drumming, I recommend Googling Damaru. It's Damaru, and look into that drum, because that is a great symbol of Shiva. So drumming and playing music would be a good offering to him. Other symbols of Shiva are the crescent moon, fire, serpents, and ash. So ash can also be good, like if you are doing some kind of a burning ritual, you can also save the ashes. So oftentimes what I will do is, like when I burn that paper, I will scatter the ashes somewhere in my yard or to the wind, but you can also save those ashes and use them for another purpose later. Offerings to Shiva, milk and honey are always great offerings to him. Water poured over a Shiva lingam is also a great offering. So if you've never heard of the Shiva lingam before, I was trying to find mine. I have a couple somewhere here in the house, and I couldn't find them right before the broadcast. But a Shiva lingam is a special kind of oval shaped stone. It's most often going to be oval shaped, and it's brown or white or a combination of the two colors. And it is a stone that is very effective at helping you balance the entire chakra system. So you can sit with it, you can meditate with it. Our coven did a whole workshop on it several months ago. Beth led us in this workshop where we studied the Shiva Lingam, and we actually send a Shiva Lingam in the welcome box, initiation box, to all of our coven initiates, because it's a stone that we find very, very helpful in the process of healing your and balancing your energy. So if you're interested, if you're somebody who is interested in stones and you've never heard of it, I would recommend looking it up. Shiva Lingam, Shiva Lingam. Let's look that up and check that out. And they're oftentimes not too hard to find. They might not be at every crystal shop, but you can often find them at many. Other ways that we can honor Shiva is through fire rituals, through burning incense, and through chanting. So with Hindu deities, chanting is one of the very best ways that you can offer them. So not I think the chanting is fantastic because it serves multiple different purposes, and at different layers it's doing different things. So on one hand, a chant can be used to call the deity. So like an evocation, we can call a deity in by using a Hindu deity in by using a specific chant for them. These chants are very special because they have been chanted in some cases for thousands of years. These very old gods and very old words that we're using. And so on that level, it can work as an evocation. It's also considered an offering. So when you sing or you chant to a god, you're rejoicing in them, you are praising them, you are honoring them, and so it's considered an offering as well. And then also these chants can do something energetically to you by changing your energetic composition in your body. So the chant, a chant, there's many, many chants for each of the different Hindu gods, but a chant that you can use with Shiva is Om Namo Shivaya. And I'm going to go ahead and type that into the chat right now, Om, and I'll tell you what it means. So Om is the word of like welcome. It's so oftentimes people will say it means like salutations. And then the word nama or namaha means typically will mean to like honor someone or to rejoice in them or to praise them. So we're basically saying, hello Shiva, we praise you. And then of course Shivaya is Shiva's name. And when we put like a ya or a yay on the end of a word, it's like kind of an extra note of, I think of it as like intimacy. Like this is like my dear God that I love so much. It's like a way of saying how much you love the God. So I'm putting that in the chat there. And so that is one way. So Om Namah Shivaya, and you can chant that over and over and over again. And that will be a way to not only call Shiva, but also to honor him. And then other ways that you can honor Shiva is through meditation and yoga. So for example, we said that Shiva was a yogi ascetic on one hand. On the other hand, of course, the god of fire and destruction and everything. But you can honor him through your own meditation and yoga or breath work practice of any kind. And then you can also honor him through fasting. So, has anybody worked with Shiva? We would love to hear from you. And then just saying a hi to a couple more. Felicia's joined us. Kurt said Facebook is acting weird when he's trying to connect. So hopefully it's not acting weird for everybody. But there are some strange things happening with unfortunately, with the broadcasts in Facebook groups right now. Taliesin said a friend gave him a beautiful painting magnet of Shiva and that he keeps at work. Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah. So he's a great god to work with. One that many people, like I mentioned earlier, may have heard of, but might have shied away from, just similarly to Kali, because people sometimes get a little bit of afraid of that destructive aspect. But just remembering what Shiva represents is the destruction that leads to something better for us. Um, okay, Felicia said it's good on her end. Okay, thank goodness. Okay, so let us move on then to the third god we're going to talk about tonight, and this is Loki. So I wanted to have different gods of different pantheons, and that's kind of my goal with this, is to show you different gods and different pantheons that you could work with. And of course, remember, all of these deities can be worked with for other things as well. Our kind of focus is shadow work and healing work in these episodes, but of course you could work with these deities for other reasons as well. Now, Loki is a Norse god. He is a trickster god and a shapeshifter and an agent of chaos. And I do recommend that if you decide to name a pet Loki, like we did, just know what you're getting yourself into, because our cat Loki is quite a chaos initiator, and he loves to cause upheavals in the house. He's a big thief. He loves to steal stuff. Of course, we love him with all of our hearts, but just kind of know, if we had named my original name that I wanted to name that the cat when we got him was Anubis. That was one of the names I had picked out, or Oberon, and my boyfriend wanted Loki, and so we ended up naming him Loki. And I always say, well, you get what you name them, right? But so Loki is Loki the god, a shapeshifter, a trickster, an agent of chaos. So his actions will often bring disaster, yet they also drive growth and change. So similarly to Shiva, though Shiva doesn't have that like trickster, mischievous element to him, and he doesn't have like the dangerous situations that Loki in the myths causes. But there's still that idea of like the destruction. Out of destruction comes growth. Out of chaos can also come growth. Loki challenges the social norms. So if you are somebody who is struggling against social norms, Loki can be a great god to work with. He reveals hidden truths that you might be avoiding or you might be burying, and he also forces growth through mischief. So his upheavals and disruptions can often look kind of mischievous. Now, it is said in myth that Loki fathered the great wolf Fenrir, who, for those who follow Norse mythology, we know that that was the bringer of kind of Ragnarok, the kind of the destruction of the gods. So this would bring great chaos to the world. The gods tried very, very hard to bind Ragnarok in chains. Oh, sorry, to bind Fenrir in chains, but he would continually break free of these chains. Finally, they were able to trick him with a magical ribbon that bound him, but in the process of all of that, Fenrir ends up biting Tyr's hand. So Loki's role in fathering Fenrir directly contributes to the bringing of Ragnarok, the destruction of the gods, or the doom of the gods. And what can we, how could we explore kind of these themes in our shadow work while working with Loki? So Loki embodies the chaos that we are trying to suppress. So sometimes we're trying to keep everything like calm and normal and neutral, and and we're trying to suppress sort of this chaos that might be building up within us or around us. So Loki can help us to work through that and find a way to let some of this out without it being so destructive. So like Fenrir, our shadow will eventually break free if it is ignored. So a question that I will sometimes get asked is, do we need to do shadow work? And we don't necessarily need to do shadow work. But what we may find is that it's hard for us to contain the shadow at all times. So sometimes you've probably heard stories of people who are trying to be good and pious and pretend that they don't have like primal urges and things like that, and then they kind of break free and go crazy at some point. So that right there is the message that Loki teaches us. If you try to contain the shadow, it will often break free and go crazy and chaotic. And so if you want to avoid that like unexpected chaos, then you want to do your shadow work. You want to be working through the things that are you know, that are down deep in your unconscious, that are threatening to burst forth to the surface in times that you don't want them to, in inopportune times. So Loki reminds us that avoiding the shadow will only make it grow more dangerous, and that suppression, when the shadow is suppressed, it will often break out violently. So, violence doesn't necessarily have to mean like hitting or hurting people physically. It can mean the words that we say. So like we keep that shadow, at bay. We think we're doing the right thing by kind of suppressing this and pushing it all off in the shadows, and then it kind of bursts forth at moments when we're not expecting it, and we have kind of a biting tongue, right? Or we're saying mean things to people that isn't aligned with who we actually are. So facing the shadow honestly and directly allows for transformation and not destruction. And I think that's really a message that Loki can help us with. So here would be a reflection question for your shadow work. What part of me am I trying to bind or silence? So really think about that. What part of me am I trying to bind or silence? So, a ritual suggestion for working with Loki is working with mirrors or working with masks. So, the shadow is oftentimes we talk about when we're talking in our shadow work, we're talking about wearing these masks that we put on that sort of cover up those parts of us that we want to keep hidden. So you can work with masks and ritual to kind of represent, you can remove them, right? Symbolically representing you removing your mask so that the shadow can truly come out and speak and be heard, so that you know what it wants, right? And how it can be healed, and how it can be integrated into the rest of yourself. You can also work with mirrors. So you could work with a mirror by looking into the mirror and looking at yourself and then naming the hidden truths out loud that you would like to be voiced, right? Rather than keeping them silently within. Now, another thing, Loki, as a trickster, he's all about laughter, right? So laughing at the ego and not taking it too seriously can also be a way that Loki can come in and be a little more playful when the work starts to get so heavy and so dark and so hard. So if you want to work with Loki, remember, you can work with any of these deities for any reason, but in particular with shadow work, these would be ways that you could work with him. Symbols of Loki are fire, serpents. You could see that theme. We've got fire and kind of serpents in all of the gods tonight. Nets, masks, and shape-shifting animals of any kind also would be symbols of Loki. Now, offerings to Loki, alcohol, spicy foods, and also like playful or mischievous offerings, candles, in particular red or orange, and also laughter and creative spontaneity. So if you are somebody who is having trouble, maybe you're so serious because maybe it's a serious world we're living in. There's a lot of hard things happening right now, and it can weigh really heavily on people. So Loki can help us kind of find a bit of laughter in at ourselves, or at our situation, which can kind of lighten the load at times. And then, of course, like I said, creative spontaneity. Loki is a god who's very spontaneous. So if you can bring spontaneity into your life, it's also a way that you would honor a god like Loki. So, and there's little baby Corey here, and she's kind of messing with the curtain back there, I see, as she's walking through. I was hoping that the cat Loki would make an appearance during this recording, but as of right now, it looks like he is not. I am going to, I was going to drop into the chat a link to the previous episode we did on the dark gods. So we're kind of coming to the end here of our discussion for tonight. But if you find that you are interested in working with deity in your shadow work, in particular the dark gods, here is the previous episode where we talked about Odin and Saturn. And now I'm blanking on the others ones I said, Chiron, and I can't remember the fourth one now. But you could check that out, and that will give you, that's another episode where we look at some dark gods and the different ways that we can use them in our shadow work. Oh, Cersei said her brother named his cat Captain Howdy from The Exorcist. Yes. Yes, yeah, Loki is definitely a Loki. Our cat Loki is definitely a Loki. It is definitely in his personality. But I've often wondered what he would have been like had he been named something different, like Anubis, for example. Okay, so we are going to segue into the Q&A. And so like I mentioned before, there was a fourth god, Aita, Aita. He is an Etruscan god, and we were going to talk about him, but we are out of time, so we're going to add him to the next episode we do on the dark gods. So we have that to look forward to, and I think that we'll also be looking at Hades and Camazotz, which is a little known god that a lot of people don't know. I have a cat named Camazotz as well. All of our cats are named after gods or goddesses of different pantheons, and Camazotz is the bat god of death in the Mayan in Mayan myth. And so baby Camazotz, when he came to live with us, he was just a few days old, and he looked like a tiny little baby bat in my hand, and therefore he ended up with the name Camazotz. So we'll be exploring him. It is a god of death, but also can help us kind of tap into some of those more primal urges as well that we sometimes suppress. So anything you have for the Q&A, you can go ahead and put it in the chat. Taliesin said, "Is Cernunnos a dark god?" Yeah, as the Green Man, Cernunnos can be considered a dark god. Honestly, we could have a whole debate on what constitutes a dark god or a dark goddess. There's even some people who will say that the Dagda can be thought of as a dark god, and most of the time we think of Dagda as very light, he's a light god. He's a god who is for people who've had trouble connecting to a father figure, or they've had a father figure who's betrayed them. The Dagda is often a very good god to work with, but you can work through in your shadow work, you can work through your father wound with a god like the Dagda, therefore making him, by some definitions, a dark god. So what is the definition of a dark god? I mean, the way I'm kind of using it is the darker gods are the gods that help us to tap into the unconscious. Remember, in myth, underworld is usually the unconscious. So any god who has any connections to the underworld, gods who live very close to the earth, like Cernunnos, absolutely can be gods that we can work with in our shadow work, and could, by definition, be considered a dark god. That's a good question. So if anybody has any other questions, it doesn't have to be related to gods or dark gods or goddesses. It can be anything related to shadow work, witchcraft, or energy. Put them in the chat. I didn't have any questions that were left for me this week. So I'm just going to go through and I'm going to tell you about what is coming up. And then hopefully if there's anybody who's live, who's got any questions they want to leave, they can leave them now. And I'm just checking to see if there are any other questions that were left for me. Yeah, I don't see any today. Okay, so let's talk about what's coming up. So first of all, next episode on 9/16, that would be a week from today, we're going to do an episode on Mabon. And the way that Mabon is timed this year, the fall equinox, which would be the mark of the start of Mabon season, is on Monday the 22nd. And so I could do an episode on the 23rd for Mabon, but Mabon will already have been passed. And I really like to do the episodes prior to the season beginning so that anybody who wants to celebrate on the exact date has ideas already. So we're going to do our Maybon episode on 9/16, and then on 9/23, I'm not exactly sure what the what the topic will be, but I should know that by next week. So that's what's coming up on Ask Aislin. And then just a note, like the viewership is very low on because there's this thing that's happened with the at least I mean viewership is very low on the live videos because there's something happening with the way that videos are feeding live into groups. So it's not allowing them to be fed through the link where the invitation was. It's going live in a different window. So if you know, if you have any friends who usually come to the lives and they're not here, reach out and let them know. Sometimes you may have to go into the feed of the Facebook group to be able to find the live. I hope this resolves because this is pretty upsetting to me. And if it continues, I may actually not be doing this any longer on Facebook. I would move this over to YouTube or something. Of course, we always put these videos later on YouTube as replays, but I might start going live through YouTube because this is ridiculous that this is the way that this is feeding live is crazy to me. So, all right, so that is what's coming up on the next episode. And then we actually have a flash sale coming up for our Shadow Seekers membership. I believe it's going to be starting next week. It's possible I could get it all done this week, but it may be more likely that it's happening next week. So what's going to happen in the flash sale? First of all, it's our 3-year anniversary. So we are going to do a discount on the first month's membership to make it easier for people to try out the membership. So if you're somebody who's been on the fence and you've been kind of watching the membership, we would love to have you join us, and this would be a good time to do it. So watch for that. It's going to be very quick, just like a flash sale is. It comes in for like 3 days, and there's not going to be a lot of, like I'm not doing a big live workshop with it or anything, but I will be offering this very special offer for those who would like to get off the fence and try out Shadow Seekers. And so the other thing I wanted to mention about these episodes is that I have plans to expand these episodes into something much bigger. So we are going to be starting to do some workshops in Shadow Seekers where we're going to look at the dark gods and the dark goddesses in much greater detail, and there's handouts and slides and things. So if you're interested in this kind of stuff, I highly recommend joining the Shadow Seekers membership so you can take this deeper. So in our Shadow Seekers membership, we have workshops and rituals that help us tap into various different things that will help us heal ourselves, work through our energy blockages in our bodies, and also kind of work through our shadow work. So if you're somebody who wants to take your kind of spiritual evolution to the next level, a membership like Shadow Seekers is maybe the perfect thing for you because you have a group setting where you can do this work and not feel like you're so alone because you have a guide, and then you also have some wonderful people in the membership who also help to support you. So we also have my Demystifying Witchcraft course, my signature course on witchcraft, which will be having an intro sale in the next couple of weeks. So that will be coming out. My Demystifying Witchcraft course is also a stepping stone to initiating into our online coven of Midnight's Flame. So if you have been looking for like a spiritual home, of course we have Shadow Seekers, and then we also have this option to join the coven. But it all starts by taking this course. So look for that. That intro sale is going to be coming soon. This is the first time that we're releasing this to the public as of right now. It's really only been released to those in our Shadow Seekers membership. If you are a Shadow Seeker and you want to get in on this course, like maybe you haven't bought it yet, there will be an extra discount for Shadow Seekers as well, which would be another kind of incentive for joining Shadow Seekers because you get a 33% off discount on the course. Now, I have not decided what I'm doing about my money magic class yet. I may be actually bundling it up and making it a bonus for anybody who's purchased that course. But there will be some kind of episode coming up on money magic in the future, regardless of whether I decide to do that or not. But there is a money magic course, that like kind of mini course that's coming out, and this workshop is going to be the first step of it. So I will know all of the details of all of this very soon, and I will let you know. If you ever have any questions about anything, reach out and let me know. And Kurt said, how about Discord? Well, I don't know that Discord would allow me to go live like this. So the benefit of having a platform like this is we have space and we have members where we can go live to those members. And I don't know enough about Discord, but as far as I know, you can't do lives like this where we can interact and chat. Maybe I'm wrong, but Discord is lower, much lower on my list probably than a platform like YouTube. So that would probably be my next place to go. But of course, you guys can help me out by making sure that you tell people about these lives so we can get more people to come to them. Okay, so I don't see any other questions in the chat, so I'm going to sign off for tonight, but leave a heart or a thumbs up somewhere in the feed. That will help us get this out to the feed of more people. If you have not already subscribed to our YouTube channel, Body, Mind, Witchcraft, make sure to subscribe, and that way you won't miss any future episodes because they're always available for replay on the YouTube channel. I'm also going to drop a link in the chat, and for those on YouTube later, this will just be below in the description of the video, and this link will link you to, I'm just trying to find it right now, it will link you to a place where you can sign up for our mailing list, and then you will also be sent a copy of The Witch's Guide to Shadow Work. So this is also a good way you get on the mailing list, and then you're going to find out about all of these future things that are coming up. So as always, it's wonderful to spend Tuesday evenings with you. And until next time, blessed be.